Peter, my next question is, and I wonder if you can do this very simplistically, so don't take too long to tell us, don't go into detail, but what I want to know is, what is the difference between an H bomb and an N bomb?
An NBomb?
Yeah, like I thought the other day that you sent like, there's a hydrogen bomb and a nuclear bomb.
There's a
What is
difference.
the difference?
Yeah, there's a difference between an H-bomb and an A-bomb, okay? But an N-bomb is a kind of H-bomb, all right? But it's not the kind that most people think of. The mainstream journalists, when they think of a hydrogen bomb, they think of the hydrogen bombs of standard conventional design that are meant to create, that can be 1,000 times more powerful than an atomic bomb. And what they're about is creating a great big blast. And that's why people are saying that North Korea doesn't have a hydrogen bomb, because the seismic signal only looks like 10 kilotons, which is like an atomic bomb. It's a very low yield for a hydrogen bomb, okay? But these guys are overlooking, these analysts are overlooking that there's another kind of hydrogen bomb, which the N-bomb is an example of that, the neutron bomb, or more accurately, it's called an enhanced radiation weapon. And it's not designed to create a great big explosion. The explosion it produces is very small. It can be like 1 kiloton, which is 1/1,000,000th the yield of a hydrogen bomb. What it's designed for is to create a special effect, like neutrons, which is what the N-bomb does. It produces neutron radiation. And what that's designed to do is to knock out tanks, but not cause a lot of collateral damage to civilian infrastructure and houses and stuff. It'll leave the houses standing, and it won't take down a lot of the infrastructure. But the neutrons will penetrate the armor in a tank and kill people, So it's a people-killing bomb that tends to preserve cities and villages and stuff. Another kind of bomb that's a hydrogen bomb, can be is specialized for X-rays. And that could be used for taking out incoming ballistic missile warheads for interceptors and things. And another kind of hydrogen bomb that does specialized effects, and the ones that I'm most concerned about, and one I think North Korea has, is the super EMP bomb. This bomb is tuned to generate huge amounts of gamma rays. Again, the explosion is very small. It can be a kiloton, 10 kilotons, 1 to 10 kilotons is a typical range for a weapon of this sort. Generates a very small explosion, but it generates a huge amount of prompt gamma rays. And so a weapon like that, a super EMP weapon, despite its tiny yield, is actually more dangerous to us than the biggest, most powerful hydrogen bomb that was ever built. The 60 megaton Tsar, which was a bomb tested by the Soviet Union in October 1961, had a yield of 60 megatons. That's 60 million tons of TNT. A bomb like that could flatten the whole state of Rhode Island, okay? It could completely blast a big city like New York and all the suburbs in the surrounding area. But a super EMP weapon, even though it was 1/60 millionth, of the power, explosive blast power of something like the Tsar, because it produces so many more gamma rays. If you detonated that at 300 kilometers over the center of the country, the EMP field would cover all 48 states. And with that one bomb, even though it has that small explosive yield, it could destroy all 40, basically the entire nation, and kill up to 90% of our population with a single bomb. And if that's what the North Korean H-bomb is, if it's this specialized kind of H-bomb that is designed to produce gamma rays, that's a lot scarier than them having the normal kind of H-bomb that everybody has been saying they don't have and they're talking about. I find it interesting that that the yield of this weapon, the seismic signal, is consistent with the super EMP weapon, and that now Kim Jong-un is describing it as an H-bomb, because that's basically what the super EMP weapon is. It's a low-yield H-bomb. And we've got other evidence that I've talked about. The fact that the Russians transferred this technology and admitted to us back in 2004 and said they had given this, the technology had accidentally, supposedly, leaked to North Korea back in 2004. And then they predicted that, it's so easy to build one of these things that the North Koreans could get a super EMP weapon in a few years. And then a few years later, right on schedule in 2006, they tested the first of their 4 illegal tests, and it looked, it had this low yield, The North Koreans celebrated. They were very happy about it. Most of the world declared it a failure because it was only 3 kilotons, But that's what a super EMP weapon would look like. And they probably weren't lying because they weaponized it and started putting this thing on missiles. So the North Koreans appear to be happy with it.
Peter, what's our ability, and I mean our by North America's ability to respond to a missile that has been sent to us? Do we have a ability to retarget a missile?
Retarget a missile.
I guess I'm asking, like, do we have any way to respond to a nuke launch that we know is coming? Is there any way to protect ourselves?
If it's launched at us in the normal way that we have anticipated in the past over the North Pole, over the North Polar area, our national missile defense is designed to deal with that. And in fact, the national missile defense guys even think that they can cope with a weapon that's coming over the northern Pacific, over the northern Atlantic, and that northern Atlantic is harder to do. That's just at the edge of what we can do. That's why Congress wants DoD to look at putting in another national missile defense site someplace on the east coast of the United States so that we'll have better coverage. The problem is that North Korea and Iran have both practiced launching over the South Pole. And in fact, there's a North Korean satellite called the KSM-3 that passes over North America every few days at the optimum trajectory to evade our national missile defenses going over the South Pole and at the right altitude, if it were a nuclear weapon, to put an EMP field over all 48 contiguous United States, most of Canada, and a big chunk of Mexico. And so that's the concern, that they can get around our national missile defenses by doing this mode of an attack, which was a secret weapon invented by the Soviet Union back in the Cold War. That's how they were planning to do it. Now the North Koreans and the Iranians apparently have this secret too, in addition to having the super EMP weapon that accidentally went from Russia to North Korea. The North Koreans somehow came up with this idea about using a fractional orbital bombardment system that goes over the South Pole, just like the Russians had planned to do in the Cold War. And another thing that gives us a problem that we haven't, that the national missile defense can't cope with, is if you were to launch off a freighter, you could use a short-range ballistic missile. And Iran has experimented with that, and so has North Korea. So you could go into the Gulf of Mexico or go off the east coast of the United States where there's thousands of freighters, shipping containers, ships. The Russians have even built a missile designed to turn a freighter into a ballistic missile launch platform called the Club K, which they are selling to our enemies. Iran has bought the Club K. And this basically is a missile that fits inside a shipping container, and you just put it on a freighter. It looks exactly like a shipping container. And immediately it would transfer that freighter into a ballistic missile launch platform. And so you could go into the Gulf. You could go where our national missile defenses don't have coverage. And even if you did have coverage, when you're launching so close, our territorial limit is 3 miles. You get just outside the territorial limit. You could be even further away. I mean, all it has to do is get above 30 kilometers. That would happen so fast, we wouldn't have time to react. So those are 2 ways of getting around our national missile defenses that are available to countries like North Korea or Iran or terrorists if they ever got their whole hands on a nuclear-armed missile.
Peter, I have just sort of one more question, and it's to go back to the Gatestone article that we were talking about earlier. Without actually mentioning it, is there something that was missing in that article that you wanted just to mention in our conversation here, without sort of being negative against that actual article, but is there something you sort of wanted to stress the importance?
I apologize. I didn't know we were talking about the Gatestone article.
And we're not. I just wondered if there was something you wanted to add in our conversation today that
I would recommend the Gatestone article. I think it's an excellent article, and it's a good tutorial, especially for people who are unfamiliar with the EMP threat. I think it's a very good tutorial, and it addresses the issue about North Korea, the North Korean H-bomb, probably being a super EMP weapon. That's so it's very fresh in that respect since the North Korean test, just happened last week. And I would add to this, it does a very good job talking about the vulnerabilities of our military systems. Mostly when we're talking about EMP, we're talking about the vulnerability of our civilian systems, our electric power grid and our communication systems, which are unhardened and unprotected. But there's a couple of particular vulnerabilities in the article, one in particular that isn't addressed, and that is the Obama administration, when they were doing a review of our strategic nuclear posture back in 2010, retargeted our Minuteman ICBMs, our long-range ballistic missiles, so they're no longer aimed at targets in China or Russia or elsewhere, but they're aimed on the oceans. They're aimed to hit broad ocean areas. And this was because the Obama administration was concerned about an accidental nuclear launch, the idea of an accidental nuclear war, something happening by accident.
Mm-hmm.
So if that were to happen, the missile would be launched accidentally. It would fall harmlessly in an ocean. And also, I think it was part of an attempt to demonstrate that our past adversaries, Russia and China, that this is a new era, and we were making this gesture, to show that we're not enemies anymore. We don't hold them immediately at risk. The problem with that, from and there are diplomatic reasons where one might, the diplomatic arguments for that, might make some sense. But from a military standpoint, especially from an EMP standpoint, it's a rather perilous posture. Because retargeting the missiles, if we were in a crisis and we had to quickly retarget all those missiles back on targets, involves a vast and complicated command and control and communications network, which is exactly the target of an EMP attack. It's this very asset, the command and control infrastructure and the like, that the bad guys would go after in an EMP attack. And if they were to catch us, to do a surprise EMP attack and catch us in the middle of trying to retarget all those missiles, it could stop us cold. It could stop us. It could basically neutralize one of the most important parts of our nuclear deterrent and stop us from making a retaliatory strike. It's just one more thing that makes the job of our military harder to do and decreases the credibility of our deterrent, and maybe in a crisis situation could be a huge temptation to an adversary. That makes more realistic the idea that you could win a nuclear war with a single blow by making an EMP attack, because we've re-aimed our missiles at the oceans, and they would have to be re-aimed back in order to be effective.
Okay, I'm going to